Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Jay Cohn. First, he accepted the job, but after further review, School District 2's pick as its new superintendent opts out.
Dr. Ross Kaysen, the school board's pick to replace Terry Bauk as District 2 superintendent, decides to forego the new job and stay in New Jersey.
Q2's Dustin Kleeman joins us tonight with more as to why Kaysen turned down the job. Dustin.
According to officials, his decision had no bearing on the district, rather recent unspecified events in his life. In a letter sent to the Board of Trustees, Dr. Ross Kaysen informed the district, quote, the timing was not right for him to make such a significant professional and personal change, largely because of recent events in his life. According to the letter, the decision was not based on anything due to the district, but the letter stated Kaysen shared he was quite impressed with the district as well as the staff and board.
The district obviously is disappointed. Dr. Kaysen was someone who I know folks were excited to have come to the district. At the same time, this was a tough decision for the board in choosing a new superintendent because they had such great candidates.
Helena Assistant Superintendent Greg Upham, another finalist for the Billings job originally here in Billings, will be contacted to discuss his possible employment.
All right, thank you, Dustin.
Well, the man who shot at 2 probation and parole officers yesterday before engaging in a 2-hour standoff in downtown Billings is now identified.
60-year-old Michael Jeffrey Anderson was rushed to a hospital last night following that standoff. Authorities not yet reporting on the extent of Anderson's injuries. We are told, however, that he is in stable condition.
Anderson is serving probation for 2 weapons charges, including a conviction for assault with a weapon in 2007 and a 2009 federal conviction for felon in possession of a machine gun.
And when officers showed up at Anderson's home for a routine probation check late Tuesday afternoon, they were met with gunfire, which they then returned. City, county, state, and federal law enforcement quickly responded for what turned into a 2-hour standoff as Anderson barricaded himself inside the home. The incident came to an end when the police SWAT team busted down the front door using an armored vehicle, then set off a flashbang to confuse the suspect.
Once the standoff came to an end, Anderson was rushed by ambulance to a local hospital. The 2 probation officers who exchanged gunfire with Anderson are now on administrative leave. The Department of Justice expects charges against Anderson to be filed in the next week.
Montana Governor Steve Bullock has issued a flooding emergency for the entire state of Montana. With most of the state already seeing above average snowfall and snowpack this winter, the recent warm temperatures and rain is now kicking the spring meltdown into full gear. Governor Bullock says this state emergency coordination center has already received numerous emergency declarations from local and tribal jurisdictions. Now, the first flooding started in mid-April, affecting 7 north central Montana counties, along with the Fort Belknap Reservation and the town of Chester. But since then, the Clark Fork River has been flooding near Missoula. The Milk River near Glasgow is out of its banks, and Lewis and Clark County is dealing with plenty of small stream flooding.
By issuing this now, the counties won't have to wait on me if they have an emergency declaration. So we want to be fully prepared so that our county and tribal areas can have all the resources they need as we deal with both warming temperatures and the real potential flooding.
That statewide declaration today also allows the governor to mobilize the Montana National Guard to help protect life, health, and property.
President Trump and his supporters are ramping up their attacks on Montana Senator Jon Tester. The president's super PAC is out with a new TV ad taking on Tester for his role in derailing the president's nominee to head the Veterans Affairs Department.
Jon Tester, disgraceful, dishonest.
The super PAC America First Action has purchased $344,000 of airtime across the state. The ad accuses Tester of spreading false information about VA Secretary nominee Ronnie Jackson and calls Tester part of the D.C. swamp and accuses him of, quote, betraying our president. Trump has been attacking Tester since late last week when Tester went public with allegations about Jackson's on-the-job conduct. Jackson eventually withdrew from consideration as VA Secretary. Tester is up for re-election this year, and President Trump has vowed to help defeat him. Now, Tester's campaign tells MTN News it's the senator's job to ask tough questions about the VA, and he will continue fighting to fix the VA and bring better health care to veterans.
The Puerto Rico National Guard says 9 crew members died Wednesday when a military cargo plane nosedived into a Georgia highway.
The officials say the plane was flying from Savannah, Georgia to Tucson, Arizona on its final military flight when it crashed shortly after takeoff. The plane was scheduled to be decommissioned once it arrived in Arizona.
One witness says the plane made a loud, strange noise just before it went down. The cause of the crash is under investigation.
Former Donald Trump campaign aide Michael Caputo faced questions from special counsel investigators today and says it's clear Robert Mueller's team is focused on Russia collusion. He says while the congressional committees are, quote, net fishing, the special counsel is, quote, spear fishing. So according to Caputo, Mueller's investigators, quote, know what they are aiming at and are deadly accurate. He also added they know more about the Trump campaign than anyone who ever worked there.
The Boy Scouts are changing their name beginning in February of next year. Programs for the older Scouts will be called Scouts BSA. Excuse me. Now, the Boy Scouts of America said this change is part of the expansion that will welcome girls into the organization. They'll also be adopting the slogan, Scout Me In. Only the program for teens aged 11 to 17, currently called Boy Scouts, is affected. The program for children aged 5 through 10, called the Cub Scouts, will keep its name. The organization will keep the name Boy Scouts of America as well.
Turning to weather, Bob, I was out in my garden today and it appears the April snow showers have brought May flowers.
Yeah, so we thought we'd take a look back today and see. April was such a long month.
Yes.
And I can tell you it was wetter, colder, and snowier than most months in the past. Let me show you how we wound up, though. This is April as we look back. The average high was 54.3 degrees. That was about 3 degrees cooler than normal. In fact, it was the 23rd coldest. The average low, well, that was 30.5, and that was about 4 degrees cooler than normal. And let's talk about snowfall. We wound up with 19.4 inches. That was about 11 inches above normal there. And that, of course, as you remember, broke the single season snowfall record. 106 is where we stand. That happened on 23rd of April. And as far as precipitation, we're about a ½ inch ahead of normal. The forecast looks like it's going to be just some spotty sprinkles. We'll chat more about that in a few more minutes.
All right. Thanks so much, Bob.
The annual Day of Donations, Yellowstone Valley Gives, gets underway tomorrow. And a man from Bridger hopes the event will help him reach his lifetime giving goal of $400,000.
Q2's Asia Gore sat down with the carpenter as he cranked out a few more frames.
I can knock you out a picture frame in under 2 minutes.
Rich Holstein is a skilled frame maker.
Chopped, nailed, glued, done.
And he should be. Holstein estimates he's built 51,000 frames in his career.
It started in the beginning as wildlife and scenery photography.
Holstein started building his own frames out of necessity.
Because I was cheap. I didn't want to pay for that.
But his ability to repurpose old barnwood earned him more than cost savings.
A gentleman comes up to me and says, I love what you're doing with the old wood. Are you interested in pulling the floors out of Old Faithful? 8 days later, I was living in a tent in a parking lot, pulling floors for free.
Q2 was there in 2005 as Holstein struck material gold, collecting the fir and maplewood floors torn out during renovations at the historic Old Faithful Inn.
This is history you're holding on to. How many presidents have walked on this wood?
13 years later, that rich history has turned quite the profit, and not just for Holstein.
As part of being a steward of these historic structures, and you know, I've taken down 200 of them over the years, I think I should give a piece of that back.
Hours away from another big donation drive, Holstein says
Picture Framing 101.
He's just over $5,000 away from his goal of giving $400,000 to charity.
One guy doing it. You never think of dreaming so big, thinking that one person could make a difference, and you can.
In Bridger, I'm Asia Gore, MTN News.
Thank you so much, Asia.
Wow.
Holstein tells us he'll be selling his frames at Sky Point tomorrow afternoon and then later at the pub station tomorrow evening.
Now, he also makes handcrafted furniture with a portion of those funds also going to charity.
Yellowstone Valley Gives kicks off tomorrow beginning at noon. The Billings Community Foundation initiative is actually an online and on-site live celebration of giving.
The annual event connects the community with more than 100 local nonprofit organizations, including Billings Depot, the Art House Cinema, and Miles City Soup Kitchen. The event goes through 6 p.m. Friday.
In Yellowstone Park, officials are reporting their first bison tourist incident of the spring. A 72-year-old woman now recovering after she was bowled over by a bison near Old Faithful on Tuesday. The woman from Boise was butted in the thigh, pushed and tossed off the trail. The woman told park rangers she didn't see the bison as she walked around a bend in the trail and simply was unable to move out of the way in time. Fortunately, though, the woman suffered only minor injuries. This is the first incident of a bison injuring a visitor this year. Last year, there was one such incident, but back in 2015, 5 tourists were injured in confrontations with park bison.
Well, it's a house with long history in the Magic City, and its position perched along the Billings rims, a place few can call home. But today, that chance opened up.
Bid to 200,000, bid to 222, bid to 200,000, 210, 10, 10, bid to 210,000, 210,000.
The fast-paced auction for the Morledge home started with a minimum bid of just $200,000. The house on Mountain View Boulevard was built in '68 with state-of-the-art architectural engineering. Now, Billings looked quite a bit different in the late '60s, and that was the goal for Dr. Morledge and his wife when designing their dream home. As you can see, that engineering has withstood the test of time against Montana's weather extremes. Unfortunately, the auction did not bring in the desired amount, so the house is still up for grabs.
All right, speaking of houses, the Playhouse Parade here in Billings got its start back in the late 1990s. Since then, it has raised about $600,000 for at-risk children, and tonight, the builders unveiled this year's playhouses.
Now, 4 child playhouses along with 1 big kid playhouse make up the parade at the Rimrock Mall. The goal is to raise $60,000 this year to help 8 local nonprofit groups. The playhouses will be on display for 6 weeks.
It's a fun event that helps everyone involved.
This is a complete win-win for everybody. The builders get to come in, they get to make these things, they donate them. We have signs with all our contributors out front. They get great exposure. We have a tremendous outpouring of community service here in town. They do such amazing things for our kids in our community.
Looks like a big crowd out there today. Now, mark it down. The drawing for the playhouses is scheduled for June 9th at noon at Rimrock Mall.
Coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, it seems some Airbnb properties have overstayed their welcome when it comes to paying taxes in Montana.
Plus, these bear deterrent dogs were put to the ultimate test along the Rocky Mountain front. We'll give you a closer look.
And in sports, the Midland Roundtable tonight announces its Athletes of the Year finalists. Scott shows us who they are.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.